Did you know that in the 1980s, before there were even rumors of a new Starfleet Academy series, before the 2000 Star Trek movie even, a movie set at Starfleet Academy had been in the works? It would have focused on the early years of Kirk, Spock and McCoy, and was intended as the starting point for a new set of movie adventures, without the aging original cast. My name is Captain Robow, and this is the story of the cancelled Star Trek The First Adventure. The 1980s were a good decade for Star Trek movies. Aside from the dud that was The Final Frontier, the other three movies had done well both critically and commercially. However, getting the original cast together wasn't always easy. Money, power, creative differences, ego, health, unavailability, all of those things got in the way of efficiently producing new Star Trek movies. In 1989, three men started to think up the next Star Trek film. Harve Bennett had written and produced the previous Star Trek movies, Ralph Winter had also been a producer on the past few movies, and finally, David Lowery had written Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Winter first pitched the concept for a prequel movie, focusing on the exploits of Star Trek's classic trio during their Starfleet Academy days, to Harve Bennett at his daughter's bat mitzvah. Bennett liked the idea. To him, the most attractive part was that the movie could be made on a much lower budget, as the original cast would have only had cameo roles. This would have avoided the large $1 million salaries for its cast, which had inflated the budgets of the previous Star Trek films. According to co-writer David Lowery, the movie was going to be a kind of Top Gun Star Trek, in which this rambunctious, willful Iowa boy, Jim Kirk, goes to Starfleet Academy and meets up with this misanthropic, misunderstood, brilliant Vulcan, who is the first Vulcan ever to attend Starfleet. To bring these characters to life, they eyed Ethan Hawke to play the young Kirk, while John Cusack was envisioned to play the stoic Spock. The trio got the studio to approve work on the script. The movie was to be slated for a 1991 release date, coinciding with Star Trek's 25th anniversary, so they got to writing. So what was Star Trek The First Adventure going to be about? The story begins after the events of Star Trek IV The Voyage Home. Dr. Leonard McCoy is speaking to a group of Starfleet cadets and is asked about his famous former crewmates, James T. Kirk and Spock. One asks, what were they like? Another, were they friends? McCoy, to their astonishment, dismisses the idea. I have never met two less likely candidates for friendship in my entire life, he says, adding that Kirk and Spock were as different as night and day, or Vulcan and Iowa. The story then flashes back to Iowa decades earlier, where a young Jim Kirk is chastised by his brother, George Samuel Kirk, for flying a futuristic crop duster irresponsibly. Our hero seems to be doomed to stay on Earth, on his small town farm, until he finally gets accepted into Starfleet Academy. Meanwhile, on Vulcan, a man named Shardik is attempting to persuade young Spock not to accept a position at Starfleet Academy, where he would be the first and only Vulcan student. Jim travels to San Francisco, home of Starfleet Academy. There he accepts a speeder bike ride from Cassandra Hightower, who will become his love interest. He meets his new roommate, McCoy, whom he immediately christens Bones, and he runs into Montgomery Scott, a young engineering officer who worked on a warp propulsion project with Jim's father, George Kirk. His father disappeared during an experiment with the dilithium-fueled warp jump. As the cadets settle in at Starfleet Academy, which would be portrayed by the Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Cassandra and Kirk grow closer. They also have to deal with a fellow cadet called Calibar, who is a prince from an alien planet that still practices slavery. Spock is beaten up by the racist Calibar and his cronies, but is saved by Kirk. Calibar is expelled for the beating, just as he learns that his father was slain in a coup d'etat, an event possibly linked to the signing of a new anti-slavery proclamation by Kodaris, an ambassador from Calibar's homeworld. Later, Kirk and Spock are confined to quarters for cheating, as Spock used a mind meld to assist Kirk on his quantum physics exam. Meanwhile, McCoy and Cassandra have to report for their first mission aboard a starship called the Enterprise. It is not the Constitution class we all know, but a predecessor to it. This antiquated, worn-out and patched-up ship is used to train cadets. The ship is sent on a mission to ferry Ambassador Kodaris to his homeworld. Before they can complete their objective, vengeful Calibar attacks and disables the Enterprise. He threatens to destroy it unless Kodaris, who he blames for his father's death, is handed over to him. Kirk, Spock, and Scotty learn of the Enterprise's dilemma and steal a prototype warp ship, the Bonaventure II, from the Starfleet Museum, but they arrive too late. The Enterprise is gravely damaged. The
The captain is dead and the crew is dying.
Kirk, Spock, and Scotty beam aboard the stricken ship and together with McCoy get it back into action. They each assume duties that foreshadow their future posts. The climax of the movie would have been an exciting battle between the Enterprise and Calibar's ship among the rings of the planet. The ships would have been fighting between rocks and chunks of ice on the planet's rings. In traditional Star Trek fashion, Calibar is outwitted by Kirk, who uses dilithium crystals to gain an unexpected advantage in battle. The movie ends back in the present day, where McCoy wraps up his tale. His communicator beeps, it's Scotty asking him if he's ready to beam back up aboard the Enterprise. McCoy steps away from the Starfleet trainees and says, "Beam me up, Scotty." So, why was this movie never made? Before I tell you, if you have enjoyed this video so far, then please give it a like. That would tell the YouTube algorithm to show this video to more people, and that really helps out my channel. Thank you. So, the trio of writers had finished their script, and the project had been greenlit by the studio. However, in the background, trouble was brewing. The original cast and Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry had not responded well to Bennett's script. The supporting cast, who were not at all in the film, were worried that if Starfleet Academy movie did well, they'd be out of a job. And Roddenberry felt protective of these characters he had created back in the 60s. At Star Trek conventions, the cast and Roddenberry used their influence with fans to marshal support against the movie. That is from fans starting pouring into Paramount, condemning the planned film as sacrilege. According to the writers, the cast purposely misinformed the fans about what kind of movie The First Adventure was going to be, giving them the idea that it was going to be a cross between the Jetsons and Police Academy. Bennett and his team tried to appease the old cast by making the movie part of a two-picture deal. First, they'd produce the Starfleet Academy movie, and 18 months later, there would be another movie featuring the old cast. This was to no avail. Bennett's relationship with the original cast had become unrepairable, and the fan backlash had already spiraled out of control. Final nail in the coffin of The First Adventure was the departure of Ned Tanen. This Paramount Studio executive had been the project's biggest supporter. With him leaving the company, the other studio executives axed the movie. Paramount would move ahead with a more traditional 6 Star Trek movie featuring the original cast. This would become The Undiscovered Country. Bennett was offered the role as producer on this project, but disillusioned by the rejection of his Starfleet Academy pitch, he quit the studio. Despite the film's rejection, Bennett remained hopeful that the movie would eventually be made. In 2004, Bennett sat down with the chairman of Paramount Pictures and pitched his idea once more. While she was enthusiastic about the proposal, Enterprise was in production at the time, and 2 prequels to the original series were deemed too many, and the idea never got off the ground. In the end, The First Adventure was never produced. The 2009 Star Trek reboot did superficially borrow the same Starfleet Academy premise of Bennett's film, but their plots were radically different. The 2009 movie became the highest grossing Star Trek film, and showed that a Kirk-Spock origin story could be very successful. Like The First Adventure though, 2009 reboot and its subsequent sequels have divided the fan base, some claiming that they are not real Star Trek. Some things never change. I am Captain Robow, and that was the story of The First Adventure, the Starfleet Academy movie that was never made. What do you think? Would this have been a worthwhile Star Trek movie, or was it better that this film was never made? Let me know in the comments down below. If you want to explore more undeveloped concepts like this one, click one of the videos on screen.